On this episode of the Wrestling Strength Podcast, I have my good friend and former Ohio high school wrestling phenom and now longtime Northeast Ohio youth wrestling coach, my man Ty Mitch. We really dig in to the youth wrestling, the youth wrestling scene, the mentality behind it as a coach on his end, as a high-level coach and competitor, and as a parent and kind of new youth wrestling coach on my end. You guys are not going to want to miss this one. Let's roll with the show. Yo, welcome back to the Wrestling Strength Podcast. As always, I am your host, Coach Myers, and the Wrestling Strength Podcast is brought to you by Max Effort Muscle. Make sure to go to maxeffortmuscle.com for all your supplement needs. We got our world famous, I'm going to say universe famous, build a stack option. That's any 3 products, or you can go any 5 products and usually get some type of great swag. Maybe it's like this hoodie that I'm wearing. Maybe with the regular stack, it might be a t-shirt, but it's any 3 products for, I think it's $110, or any 5 products were $175. Get it delivered to your door. Our products, they work, they taste great, it's amazing, and you need it for that little bit of extra to get the most out of your performance. maxeffortmuscle.com. Now, I think I should also mention that the Wrestling Strength Podcast is now brought to you by the Coach Myers Strength Conditioning app. If you go to coachmyersstrength.com, you can download my app. Maybe you've seen my website when I had that, the membership website. This is very similar. The big difference is with the app, it's organized much better, and there's technique videos embedded in every single workout for every single exercise. So whether you're a seasoned pro in the weight room or with your wrestling team, or whether you're a coach or parent that knows literally nothing about strength training, my app will give you all of the tools to be able to train your athletes correct and safely, maximize their strength performance out there on the mat. It's only $14.99 per month or $99 for the entire year. And if you go to coachmyersstrength.com today, there's a 7-day free trial. You can check it out. I guarantee you're going to be hooked. It is going to be an absolute game changer for you. Check out the Coach Myers Strength Conditioning app. It is going to make a difference for your wrestler or your wrestling program. Now, our title sponsor here at the Wrestling Strength Podcast is Ice Barrel. Ice Barrel is a cold therapy training tool that makes it simple and easy to bring ice baths to your routine. Now, I started using cold therapy training, I don't know, man, it's probably been almost 2 years ago now. And I initially did it because I wanted the physical benefits of, lowering inflammation, lowering, just kind of my overall physical stress, being able to sleep better at night. And that has definitely happened. But the main benefit that I feel from doing cold contrast therapy is the mental health benefits. My mental, stress level is like significantly reduced. I just got in my ice barrel a few hours ago before I came into work today. And I'll just tell you, I'm just so even keeled. The way I'm able to approach, my work day, my, family life, take care of things around the house, everything just feels a little bit less stressful and easier since I started doing cold therapy. And I know that anyone who's listening, whether you're an athlete, a business owner, whether you work a 9 to 5, whatever it is, you can benefit from using cold exposure therapy in your ice barrel. The ice barrel is durable, compact, portable. It's lightweight. You can pick it up over your shoulder, carry it anywhere you need. It's made in the USA, actually right here in Ohio, using 100% recycled materials. They have a 30-day money-back guarantee, and they also have financing available. Now, with its sleek design and compact footprint, Ice Barrel makes it easy to experience the benefits of cold therapy from the convenience of your home. And Ice Barrel is going to give you, the Wrestling Strength Podcast listeners, $125 off when you go to icebarrel.com/gutcheck. Or you know what, let's just make it easy for you. You can go to icebarrel.com and use the code GutCheck, or I think they have a special one for the podcast listeners, which may even give you a little bit more money off. And that code is wrestling. So just use the code wrestling at icebarrel.com. Again, that's ICEBARREL.com. Get your Ice Barrel ordered, and you can get colder and feel better. All right. So got a special guest for you guys today. And actually, we just got out of the Ice Barrel a little bit ago. Yeah. How you feeling about that cold exposure therapy?
It was therapeutic. When I left the second round, it was kind of like a euphoric feeling, very calm and even keeled, like you said. I've never done that before either. So went from sauna to ice barrel, back to the sauna, and then ice barrel again. It was
And there definitely is a euphoria that comes from it.
When I left that ice barrel the second time, I was like, whoa, it was a cool feeling.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so I better introduce him before we get too much into this talk here. So, guy I've known for a long time, and there's a name that's going to be well known to anyone, especially in the Ohio wrestling circle. This guy was a 3-time state champ in high school, was a top level recruit coming out of Northeast Ohio, wrestled at D1 level at Virginia Tech, and has been now at this point I would say even a long time coach. He's been in it for about 7-8 years up in Northeast Ohio. My man, Ty Mitch.
Yeah, been coaching since I was left school, 23 years old, and I couldn't leave the sport after stopping college wrestling, so I stayed with it. Started off at Brecksville High School, coached there for 5-6 years, and learned a lot those first 5-6 years. Being an assistant, you kind of want to follow guys that you grew up learning from. Like Coach Haverdo was the Brecksville coach, and I've learned a lot from him, and just trying to use everything I've learned for these kids.
So one of the reasons I was most excited when you reached out about coming down, for us to number one, I was excited just to see you because it's been a while.
Yeah.
And I knew we'd get some bonding time, get to do our fire and ice together, get a little workout in, get a little pump, but I was really excited for the podcast because you got to think over the years when you and I have bumped into each other, whether it's at the slip and fly or wrestling events or whatever, you get to talk, but so much of the talking is on like the surface level when you're at different things. You don't really get to sit down and have a deep, pointed conversation. So when you reached out, I thought, man, I need to have Ty on the podcast because, I'm just ending my first year as a youth wrestling coach. I've been coaching kids and just coaching in a strength capacity for decades now, but this is my first year as an actual, wrestling coach in the room. So I'm really fresh in it right now. My kid's young. He's 10 years old. This is our first year doing it. I'm probably going to be with the program for a long time. Someone like you who's been in wrestling for so long, you've been around, not only were a high-level competitor yourself, but now you're coaching a lot of high-level kids in a very, high-level wrestling area of the state, whereas here we're still kind of on the come up. So I really want to get some perspective from you and kind of learn from you, what it takes to take some of these kids and, kind of help them be elite without, driving them away from the sport.
Yeah, I mean, as far you got to have two hats, as a dad and as a coach. So you got to know when it's time to encourage your kid. Obviously, you never want to beat them down, but you got to be hard on them sometimes. The biggest thing for me as a coach, I see the dads that never really had a wrestling background come in, sit on the mat, only focus on their kid, and and like I've mentioned before, there's these dads that when their kid is constantly looking over at their dad, when the coach is teaching or they're going to live go and they get taken down, then instantly their head turns and looks for their dad's, satisfaction or, how upset they are. That's just it's gonna wear on a kid, and they're not gonna perform to the level that they're used to, or they can be when they're constantly thinking about is dad pissed at me or mom pissed at me, and when you're a kid, you don't care about how wealthy you are growing up or all these nice things. All you care about is the attention that your mom and dad are going to give you and the approval. The approval. That's all they care about. So when they are supposed to be at their sport that they're supposed to be enjoying and having fun at, and it becomes a nightmare for them because they're worried about if Timmy takes me down twice in practice, dad's going to, ream me on the way home, or however it may be, it makes kids not love it. And this sport is really, really hard. And if you don't love it, man, it becomes even harder. But, when you learn to embrace, that you love this sport, and that it just takes you so much farther. It's a really important thing in the sport.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm glad that you brought that up about the dads that just kind of hover over their kid, because I it's something that I'm guilty of myself, and I definitely felt like, all right, my kid, wrestled a few years ago. He wrestled in first grade for a little bit, but then hadn't wrestled the last couple of years. So this was his first year back in the room, and they wanted me to help out coaching. And I know that I instinctively know I shouldn't just try to coach my kid, but I also knew, like, I need to make sure that he makes enough headway early on that he's going to stick with it, not just long-term, but even just for this year. And I felt like as the year went on, I was able to, like, okay, now I can kind of move around the room a little bit more. But early on, I felt like I had to be on him. Not so much, yelling at him when he got taken down by little Timmy, but more like I need him to understand how to drill properly, how to compete in the room, when to get tough in positions, because it's one of those things when a kid's new, they don't really understand that. But as I felt like he started to get a handle of that, then I felt like, all right, now I don't have to hover over him as much. I'm still, because he is so new, I was still probably devoting most of my attention to him, but it allowed me to kind of break off and work with other kids and not always be right over top of him. And I actually just had this, talk with the guy who was our, Jamie, who was our head coach this year, because he's probably moving on to the middle school next year because his kid's moving up. And I might take over the program. I said, well, the good thing is, Jack has a year under his belt now, and I won't feel like I have to hover over him. Because obviously, if you're the head coach, you can't do anything like that. So next year, I said, I feel confident enough now. He understands how to drill. He understands how to compete in practice. And I can kind of let him, do his thing where I can maybe coach more kids. But again, it's even with me having understanding of how to coach and having experience coaching in some capacity, I still was very guilty of that, especially early in the season. So I can imagine for a parent who has never wrestled, they're in that room and they're just thinking, you hear it all, get up, stand up,
Yeah. Well, like I said, there is times where you have to be tough on your kid,
Right.
And it's like drilling properly, and it's effort. If your kid's not giving maximum effort, then he shouldn't be there anyway.
Shout out max effort.
Didn't even mean to do that.
No, I love it.
If he's not giving his max effort in practice, then he's not doing it right. And that's, as a parent, that's like, okay, listen, dude, that you're here for a reason, so get the most out of it. Now, maybe they didn't love this. Maybe they don't love the sport. So effort's a big thing. And raising, I don't have any kids, but it's based on, what kind of parent you are. Like, are you making sure you get the most out of them? So that to me is super important. But I think you're doing it the right way. And I think as a head coach, you get to control what kind of workouts he's going through.
Right.
Like a lot of these, for me at least, when I was a high school coach, before I kind of really got into the youth and junior high, I'd watch some of our youth practices and I'd be like, kind of bothered, like, okay, like this isn't what we should be doing here. So it's like, but you don't want to step in and step on people's toes and whatnot. So, but you get to control that if you're taking over the youth program. And
well, so what do you think now with you taking over the youth program up there, which is, in my mind, that's the foundation for any successful high school program. You have to have a strong youth program because that's what's going to feed into it. So what do you think kind of is the secret sauce, especially when if you have a room of kind of mixed abilities where you have some kids that are already kind of elite, they're already on the travel tournament circuit or whatever, and then you have some new kids in there too. Like, what do you think is the right balance?
Well, as far as technique, it's the basics. I must be in this bad technique Instagram algorithm because I will get reels of this just awful, just high flying moves, just technique. I'm like, what is going on? But
we're not going to name any names.
Yeah,
but.
No, I don't even know who the people are. So, but for me, it's position, stance. But you can win so many matches in this sport by just being in good position at all times.
That's right. I've told so many of the kids on our youth team, I'm like, if we stay in good position and just try hard, you're going to win a lot of matches.
It's crazy. And people, like, probably the thing I yell most to the kids is, like, get in your stance. Like, your lead hand should be able to touch the mat at all times. If it's not, you're too high. If his head's lower than yours, he can get to your legs. That's the way I look at it. And so positioning, and you got to have attacks to both sides of the body. You got to have, it's just basics. A head outside attack is your high crotch, your double leg, and your head inside is, a single leg or a knee pull, whatever you want to call it. And that on your feet, those are the three things. Know how to snap somebody down, push and pull. Learning how to push and pull is really important for youth kids.
I think a lot of kids at that young age, when you try to teach them that, they think it's just I'm grabbing them and pulling them with my arms.
Yeah.
Maybe especially kids that haven't done any type of strength training yet, they don't understand how to use their whole body.
Yeah.
And
I spent a week in New York City with Kendall Cross, and he has a very different outlook on training because he spent a ton of time overseas in Russia. He's an Olympic gold medalist, and I think he won in Atlanta. And
96 I think was when he won.
He told me, he's like, when kids in Russia are taught how to wrestle, it's so much different than here in the States. basically a coach will be like, won't tell him a move to do. He'll just say, get behind him and lock your hands. Tell me how you're going to get behind this guy and get your hands locked. So these kids just figure out ways to
manipulate the other kid.
Exactly. Versus stepping this way and locking your hands here and doing, like, we're super technical in the U.S. and it shows when at a high level. But as far as your foundation, learning your body control and stuff like that, it's big. One of the things, you know, not just with my kid, but even some of the other youth kids around his age that I've had in the gym a little bit, that I think has really helped them. I say, like, all right, if you can push a sled, then you understand how to drive into someone. You know, understand how to pressure someone when you're on top of them. You know, I think even just kind of that simple thing of understanding, like, all right, if I'm on top and someone's yelling pressure, like, a lot of kids don't understand what that means. Yeah. You know, but it's starting. Everything starts from the ground up. If I'm just pressuring with my arms, it's really not doing anything. We have to be able to, you know, use our feet and use our hips to kind of drive into someone. Absolutely. You know, and having that kind of that Russian mindset made sense to me. Parents ask me all the time, you know, they have an 8-year-old or 9-year-old and they'll come to me, how can I get my kid better at wrestling at this age? Or, you know, even younger, they're like, what should I do to complement wrestling? I'm like, I always tell parents, if you can get your kid into gymnastics, do it. Learning how to control your
body awareness,
body control, that and basic body weight functional strength. Yeah. You know, is your kid doing push-ups at home? Is he doing pull-ups? Is he doing sit-ups? And, you know, gymnastics, I've seen it. I've had kids that can do backflips when they're 7, 8, and they have a clear advantage over the kid that didn't. Oh, absolutely. I think especially when you get into any type of like non-scripted situation in wrestling, which happens all the time, because most moves are not going to go according to script. Especially at that age. They're just rolling around. Right, who's got better hips? Yeah, so who's going to win? Who's going to come out on top in some youth scramble when you got 2 8-year-old kids? Is it going to be the kid that can do backflips or can do a cartwheel? Yeah. Or the kid that's never done anything like that? I know. It's crazy. It makes a big difference. But, you know, I also don't like when, especially nowadays, these kids they're one sport like dominant. Like they'll be 8, 9, 10 years old and they've only wrestled before. Yeah. They're not every kid is going to get a full ride to Iowa or Ohio State. Like, you know, and that goes for any sport, you know, football. No, for sure. Football, basketball. They think they're going to be the next LeBron James or, you know, Joe Burrow. But, you know, you could have wrestled, played baseball, football, rugby, whatever it is. So here's what I think, you know, I think there's kind of a misconception. I think everyone thinks that back in the day, let's say 20, 30, 40 years ago, that every kid played 3 sports. Yeah, it's not the case. No, that's not the case. There was still probably a lot of people who were successful that maybe they only played 1 sport. The difference is they didn't play that sport and travel for it year round. So let's say if we had someone back in the 70s or 80s where they loved to wrestle and that's all they did. Maybe they wrestled in the winter. Maybe they lifted some weights. In the summertime, maybe they did some freestyle, but they were out shooting hoops with their buddies. They were out running around the woods, like behind my house, building a tree fort and doing things that kids do. Kids now, what do? Like if they're not at sport practice doing structured play, there is no unstructured play anymore. They stare at a screen. Yeah, I see it all the time. I mean, I see it with my kids, and I have to break them away from YouTube or whatever. And for the record, my kids don't have phones. They're not allowed to have phones until they're 16, you know? I like that rule. But I think that's a bigger issue than kids playing multiple sports. Because I think even back in the day, the kids that were one sport athletes, they weren't one activity kids. For sure. They had other activities that they did because childhood used to be filled with a lot more boredom and unstructured time. Now the boredom is just soaked up by a screen. Yeah, it's swiping. Yeah, and swiping. So you have these kids that are, you know, they're so immersed in a sport, and then any of their free time is just spent, you know, swiping or, you know, zoning out. It's crazy to think about. You know, phones started really getting popular when I was in like middle school. I think the first iPhone came out when I was a freshman, which is crazy to think about. So you're at least old enough you can remember what life was like before the phones. For sure, yeah. You know, playing, you know, kick the can in you know, in my cul-de-sac and playing pickup basketball games, like all that stuff. Playing on the rough streets of Aurora, right? Yeah, super rough over there. We had fun though, you know. Like, if you have a good neighborhood with kids, like you learn how to scrap with your friends, playing like, you know, tackle football and baseball, whatever it is.
I mean, do you think kids are playing pickup games of tackle football anymore? I don't know if they are.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, soft parents nowadays. They're not playing tackle football, and it's not what it used to be, it seems like.
Yeah, I think number one, I don't even know if it's soft parents. I think it's a lot of lazy parenting.
Yeah.
Because parenting is tough, especially when your kids are young. They demand a lot of you, especially now, when you're busy, you have a career, you have things you have to do. It's so easy to hand your kid a phone or a screen, and then it's like an instant, like you have time to do what you need to do now. But it's really I'm not saying there isn't times that me and my wife have had to do stuff like that, especially when the kids were younger. You park them in front of the Nickelodeon and hope they watch it. But it's really lazy parenting. And, I forget where I was going on this tangent other than, I'm a great parent. These other parents don't know. But no, it just it bothers me because I think there needs to be unstructured time. There needs to be time to go out and learn how to be tough and scrap with your friends in the neighborhood, whether you're playing kick the can or football or climbing trees or whatever. I mean, I think that's all just a crucial part of development.
For sure.
And it, like you said, you had that growing up, and then ninth grade, phones come along. It's transformed the way people interact.
Yeah. The good thing, at least for some of this internet now, is, stuff like Flow Wrestling,
Oh, absolutely.
I try to tell kids, Flow Wrestling got popular when I was in high school, and there used to be just Technique Tuesday, where they would post one video of like a certain technique, and you'd watch it, and then you'd wait till the next Tuesday for Technique Tuesday. Now they have an encyclopedia on this website. You could search by underhook, by head inside single. You could search by hundreds of different technicians, and
dude, the access to knowledge and I mean the internet's just completely changed everything. But when you think of the sport of wrestling, back in my day, like if you wanted to learn a new move,
buy DVD or VHS.
Well, and even that, I mean, you had to know where to order it from. You couldn't go on the internet and search for a VHS. You might have saw an ad in the back of USA Wrestling, but it was basically like if you would go to a wrestling camp once a year, there was hardly. Now you're from Northeast Ohio, so there was always clubs up there, but like where I was from, there wasn't a lot of wrestling clubs or anything. So if you wanted to learn, maybe you went to a wrestling camp in the summer, and if you're lucky, there was a good technician there or whatever.
For sure.
People would have moves and like, oh, okay, we've never seen a dump before. Like you wouldn't even know how to defend it because you had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
And whereas now, like these kids are so advanced. I mean, dude, I think I talked to Joey about this, but in one of our youth duels this year, we're wrestling Lakewood, which is like a little town right down the street. And this was a kid that wasn't, he wasn't any type of like great wrestler for them, but he had an inside trip. And I'm like, I can remember being in high school, and the first time I saw an inside trip at the state tournament, it was Johnny McGee, who was this phenom. Oh. And we saw this inside. We're like, holy shit. And he was inside tripping everyone right to their back, and no one could stop it. And I just seen a youth kid who wasn't any good last month hit an inside trip at a dual meet.
I know.
It's like, holy shit.
These kids are so good.
So good.
I mentioned some of these parents are soft, but some of these kids are so talented nowadays. It's nuts. I see 7-year-olds hitting John Smith low singles. I'm like, dude, I didn't learn that till I was, 16 years old. Like, it's just nuts that, I preach to kids, like, be a student of the sport. I would watch a flow technique video and be like, I think I can do that. Go to practice, try it. It works or it doesn't. And you can learn so much by just watching matches or, technique videos, or even like the mental stuff. Those flow films of documentaries, like they're all so good. Mm-hmm. So I preach to kids, and I usually, when I'm running camps or clinics or even practices, I like to quiz them. Like, do you know who this is? You'd be surprised. I mentioned, like, everyone knows Kyle Snyder and Jordan Burroughs, but when you try and go a little deeper, they have no idea. And I'm like, look them up. When you go home, your homework today is tell me how many world titles John Smith has, or whatever it is, stuff like that. And you never know, because that might lead down to 5 other videos he's going to watch.
Yeah, they'll go down the rabbit hole and really start learning.
That's what I want. I want that to happen, because just don't watch my videos on Flow. I have way too many losses on there.
So I guess maybe the flip side of that is, I haven't had to deal with this here because, like I said, we're trying to build a program and trying to come up here.
Yeah.
You're in an area where there's already a lot of probably advanced youth kids. How do you deal with when you have a kid that comes in the room and either, because of whatever he's already accomplished, he's a Tulsa champ or whatever, the dad thinks he already knows everything. What do you deal with these kids that come in? They think they already, like, they already know what they do well, and you're not going to show them anything.
Yeah. So I like to say my favorite age to coach is that advanced youth, junior high, because the kids aren't, the parents can be cocky all they want. I don't really care, but it's the kids that are still like sponges, and they listen to everything you say. They're not talking during your technique. They don't think they're too good. And that's my favorite age, is because they respect you still, and they don't think they're too good, and they're still sponges, and you can really kind of groom them to do the technique you want. You can see the difference too by the end of a practice. Well, when you got some high school kids, I'll go in and actually dealt with this. I coached at the Wrestling Factory for a short stint, but I was new, and Brecksville and St. Ed's have a decent rivalry. Mm-hmm. And I'd go up there and wrestle with some of these high school kids, and some of them would be from Ed's, and you would think that they were trying to fist fight me out there. Just treat me a little different. Some of them were great, obviously, but some of them just like had like a little chip on their shoulder for me. I'm like, dude, I'm trying to help you here.
Yeah.
So, but it's all good.
Now, what about the parents? So, I mean,
So back to your question, you kind of tell them like, listen, I know what I'm doing. And a lot of it, there's proof in the pudding. You got to see like if I've developed good kids, and which I have. I've had multiple state champs and Fargo placers and Fargo champs, but some of these dads, they don't realize like that you've put in years and years of studying the sport and training and coaching, that like I know what I'm doing here. So they got to have a little trust in you. And that's, as far as growing up for me, that's all my mom and dad did. They drove me to where I needed to be, put me in front of good coaches, and let me listen to them.
This is something we talked about a little bit when we were in the sauna today. But you said that was like your dad, didn't have a wrestling background, but he would take you there and like hand you over. Yeah. He wasn't on the side of the mat trying to overcoach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said, like I claim that I had the best wrestling dad. He was super competitive, great athlete. Would drop me off, give me words of encouragement on the way as soon as I got out of the car, and if he noticed that my effort was bad, he would let me know, but that was never the case. Like, the way he raised me was always, go your hardest. But he put me in front of people like, Eric Burnett, and basically like, listen, you have full reign over my kid. If he's slacking off, let him know. If he's being soft, let him know, and pump him up when he's doing well. So, that was when I noticed a difference in training growing up. My dad handed the keys over to these great coaches, and them letting, doing their thing with me. And we put in some miles too, between my dad and Johnny's dad, the Julius. We were drill partners growing up, and we would drive Tuesday, Thursday to Milan, Ohio, which is where the Stiebers and Tesaris lived, and it's 2 hours and 15 minutes, there, and then obviously another 2 back. So we do that every Tuesday, Thursday.
Whew. That's commitment,
yeah,
boy.
We'd be getting home on school nights at like 11 o'clock at night, just dead tired, sleeping on the car ride home. But that's when I got good. That room was like, it was a war zone. It was to this day, I've never ran a practice that hard. Mr. Stieber was the dog trainer. We were called the Ohio Dogs, and it was just so many state titles, and we were just all
the
so
kids
tough.
The kids that came out of that room, it's really just unbelievable.
It's ridiculous. Between Hunter, Logan, me, Johnny, Camp Tesari, they're alones,
Well, who was the upper weight?
Chris Phillips.
Chris Phillips, yeah. Who may have been the best out of anyone in high school,
absolute phenom, just a freak. And there was just so many more. Jamie Clark, Felipe Martinez, and it was just, I always make this joke that like, sometimes when you're tired in practice and you're going live goes, you search for the kid who's like, I could take a little easy go.
Yeah.
I was that kid. I was the break.
You were the easy go in the room.
Yeah. When I got Logan fishing for me, I'm like, God damn it.
Well, at least you knew when he was fishing for you at that point he was doing it because he was a little tired.
Yeah,
so maybe you weren't going to get full throttle.
And that
Logan.
never really happened. Yeah, it didn't take much. 50% Logan was enough.
Yeah, when I had Logan on here, one of the things he talked about, because we talked a lot about kind of the culture and in his household growing up and stuff, and he said, one of the things that really stuck with, because everyone always just kind of thinks of him, about his wrestling IQ and how great he was and everything, but he also really loved to train. And he said, like when when they would go somewhere, they would run there. You know, it was just something they did. Like there was, you know, working out and training was just so ingrained in their life. It was like, it was hard to see the boundary between practice and training time in the rest of his day. 100%. And that's really, you know, that's really something I've tried to do, or I think I have successfully done in my house, is that, you know, we do physical things all the time. It's not just some special thing we do 3 days a week for an hour. Mm-hmm. Like I told you, I'm getting ready to build that outdoor gym. Yeah. Because if it's there, my kid will be on it all the time.
Just by accident.
Just by accident, you know. I make sure if I'm stacking firewood, even if it's going to slow me down a little bit, he has to do it with me.
Yep.
You know, on the weekends, like if he's bored, I'm like, all right, well, grab your bike. We're going on the bike trail. We'll do a 10-mile bike. Yeah. You know, it just has to be part of the. I really believe whether your kid's going to end up being a great athlete or not, if you can have a culture of hard work in your house, it is just so important, just for their overall development.
Yeah. I mean, Logan was my peer. Like, we were the same age, but I looked up to him because even when we were kids, it was just the work ethic between him and other people was just so drastic. Like, he was.
And you're talking about a room where it was other multiple time state champs. It's not like it was him versus the scrubs.
It was him, and we were below him, and everyone knew it. Like, he was the pinnacle growing up. And I remember my dad telling me, just do what he does. And I tried my best to do that. You know, I mentioned earlier in the sauna, like during high school, you know, me and Johnny ended up not going to the same high school. He went to Walsh, I went to Aurora, which is, you know, we lived a mile away from each other. But my dad would send me to Stevers for a week during Christmas break. And I got a little life of Monroeville, and those kids just put in the work. And you know, those winter sessions were good. And that made a big difference in me, you know, winning state titles in March.
So obviously it worked with you guys. It worked with you. There was the right balance, you know. But I think, like, at what point do you look at a kid, you know, and say, like, all right, he's still a 8-year-old, 9-year-old, 10-year-old or whatever. When do we just let them, you know, stay home for Christmas? When do we not send them to, you know, when do we not travel every weekend in the off season to these big tournaments out of state and stuff? Like, you know, do you think it needs to be more of, okay, the kid needs this and it seems like they want it, or, you know, I don't know exactly what I'm getting at, but, you know, there has to be
I get what you're saying. It's kind of like, you got to get a gauge. I guess that's would be really hard as a parent, because you, as a parent, you want him. I want to send this kid to Tulsa and see how he does, but you got to have a gauge of, does he love this? Does he want to do this?
So it goes back to, do they love it or not?
Yeah, I think it all does. Yeah. You know, like, I remember the first time my dad asked me, he's like, do you want to go to Tulsa? I'm like, yeah. I think I was in 5th or 6th grade. And like, I loved it though. Not everybody did. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he was never like, we're going to Tulsa. It's, you ask, you know, do you want to do this?
It sounds like he waited till the right time to ask. He probably already knew that you loved it at that point.
He's not going to put me in that tournament if I didn't show success or that I loved it. You know, that's like throwing a lamb to the wolves there. But yeah, you got to have that gauge.
Well, I think, again, not to always just keep talking about my experience as a dad, but I mean, I guess I'm in it right now, you know?
This is good.
But, no, I think that, when I think about my kid, I think that he loves training, but I don't think he loves wrestling yet. He likes it, and I think he likes it a lot. Yeah. Especially because he did pretty good this year, but I don't think he loves it yet. So that's why, like, you know, the season's been over for like 3 weeks. Yeah, I asked him last week if he wanted to go to open mats. He said no, so I didn't take him. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, maybe like in a year or two, hopefully he develops a real love for it. Then it'll be easier for me to like say like, okay, well, just because you don't feel like going today, we're going anyway.
That love for competing.
I don't know. I don't think he has the absolute love for it yet. Well, but it's still his first year.
You mentioned he had success his first year, which I think early success plays a big role in wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, relevant success. You know what I mean?
He's not, you know, OAC state champ first year, but like, you're winning more than you're losing. That plays a factor, you know.
For sure.
If you're getting your ass kicked every time you wrestle, like, this sport sucks. Like,
well, and I think that's such a hard thing too, because we do have some kids on the team that it was their first year. A couple of them had to be in our, you know, quote unquote varsity lineup because there was no one else in that weight, and they lost every match. So how do we get that kid to come back next year? Because their experience was way different than my son's experience.
For sure. What you got to do is you talk to that parents like, listen, there's a novice tournament this week. Take them there. Yeah. Get them a first place trophy. And that's a big thing. Like, I guess probably the same type of deal growing up. They have the varsity and they have like the all-star, they call it, or whatever. With the JV. Well, if that kid should not be in the varsity lineup, even though you got to plug him in because he's the only guy at that weight, give him 2 JV matches. Make sure he wins more than he lost that day.
I'm also like, I'm kind of contemplating, like let's say in theory, if I take over our youth program next year, and let's say that we have some kids like that again, maybe, and it's usually in the upper weights in the youth program. You have some kids that come out that weigh 120 and are a little bit, not in the greatest shape or whatever, and they've never wrestled before, but you have no one else at that weight. So you got to plug them in. But I'm almost thinking for next year, like, all right, if these kids are probably guaranteed to give up 6 anyway, do I even put them in the varsity lineup? Do I just say like, hey, we're just going to take a forfeit? This kid's just going to wrestle in the extra matches that we do at the end. I'm almost kind of leaning more towards that because I know that, like, especially one kid in particular this year, I feel like he's going to be on the bubble to come back because he got hammered every time he went out there. Well, and so really, it was no different than us giving up the forfeit, I get it.
And it's always, like you said, it's the third grader who's 120 pounds, who is out of shape, or a little out of shape. He's got to wrestle the fifth grader. Or who's he's older, more mature, and he's just.
I told the one kid one time, I said, "Hey, don't feel bad. That kid drove here today."
Yeah, seriously.
That kid got a mustache, and you're, a third grader.
It's always those kids that are a little bit overweight at a young age that don't come back because they wrestled some kid that's 3 years older than them.
Right.
Especially in those duels, when it's like what, second to sixth grade.
Right.
Or like,
no, it's kindergarten through sixth.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So that's why these local age tournaments are good.
Yeah.
It gives you more of a judge of where they're at. But those I did all those growing up, and I was a small kid, so I wrestled kids my age or sometimes younger. Sometimes I was the one beating down on some third grade when I'm in fifth grade. That's tough, those duels.
Well, speaking of that, so this was kind of funny. Something that happened in one of our duels. My wife had she was talking to someone, a mom she knows from the other team, and she ended up sitting on accident in front of the mom of the kid that my kid's getting ready to wrestle.
Yeah.
And so Jack goes out there and hammers the kid and arm bars him or whatever. And the mom gets kind of realizes that, Julie's sitting there and that's her kid. She said the mom got kind of confrontational with her, and she was like, "Well, how old's your son? My son's only in second grade." She's like, "Well, my son's in fourth grade, but what are you talking about?"
Wrestling moms are
nuts, right?
Nuts. I went to Lake Catholic had a youth tournament, and they had a novice and a normal youth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, apparently some kid was in this novice tournament 3 years running, and shouldn't have been. Novices for first or second year, typically first. And this mom lost her mind on this other mom. Your kid's been in this novice tournament for 3 years. You're just going crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy for the mom to act that way, but also too, I think your kid, you have to recognize, all right, my kid's not a novice anymore.
Yeah, I don't know who's worse.
Yeah, exactly. So, but also too, we had a couple kids this year on our team that were third and fourth year kids. Mm-hmm. That they were going to the open tournament. They were doing the open division because they're technically not a novice anymore, but they were getting absolutely hammered.
Yeah.
And so I had to tell the one dad, I was like, "Hey man, I know your son, this is his fourth year, but his first year, he probably couldn't even stay in a stance, didn't win a single match. His second year, he probably didn't win any either. He's really still a novice." I was like, if you take your kid to a novice tournament, no one's going to bat an eye.
These parents know.
Yeah, exactly.
These parents know if they're...
And I get he wanted to do the honorable thing.
Yeah.
Because he's like, well, he's not novice fourth. But I'm like, he's not getting anything out of getting pinned in 30 seconds in every match, wrestling these kids that are OAC state qualifiers stuff. Your kid is still doesn't really know how to wrestle yet.
Well, and sometimes that's a hard pill for these parents to swallow.
Right.
Listen, my kid this is third, fourth year. He shouldn't be in this tournament.
Right. But the flip side of that is too, all right, maybe it's his third or fourth year, but he's only wrestling in this rec league. He don't do anything outside of it, open mats, clubs. He's not doing any type of strength training. No camps, no nothing. So if you only wrestle a couple months out of the year and then they're doing whatever the rest of the year, they probably are still a novice.
Yeah,
because there's some kids that are
12 months a year.
Yeah, there's some kids that are second year kids that are really fucking advanced. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because now they're 2 years in, but they're on a year round grind already.
Yeah,
they're club kids, and they're traveling all over the place and stuff.
Some of these kids wrestle so many matches.
Yeah.
I have these two brothers. They wrestle probably up to 100 matches a season, which is a ton.
That is a ton.
That's a ton.
Well, I tell you, because one of my good buddies his kid, this is from the school we moved from. They're right next door. But his kid and Jack are lifting partners. And they have been for about 3 or 4 years now. But anyway, his kid won an OAC state title last year. He went 55-0. But he also, too, they travel all the time. So in my mind, I'm thinking, dude, you're taking your kid out to Vegas. You're taking him all over the place. And it's obviously worked. And he's the type of kid that's wired for it.
Yeah.
So to hear that there's other kids out there getting 100 matches.
Oh, yeah.
And when I think Tripp is wrestling all the time, that is how do you get 100 matches a year as a youth kid? It is unbelievable.
It's nuts. One other piece of advice I'd give you, too, is find Jack a drill partner and make sure they're always build a good a drill partner. That's huge.
That was something that our coach did really good. So I think I told you our head coach has a 6th grader and a 3rd grader, and both those kids are really good. And his 3rd grader was a weight class or 2 above Jack, but close enough that they could wrestle together. So he made them drill partners. So Jack had a lot of catching up to do. And even by the end of the year, he might only be taking him down 1 out of every 6 or 7 times. Okay. But having a kid already that was advanced and understood how to drill, it raised his level so quick. Rather than drilling because then the practice where that kid wasn't there and he had to drill with other kids who didn't really know how to wrestle yet, or maybe they knew how to wrestle a little bit, but didn't really understand how to drill. Mm-hmm. It just would tear at me. I think, he needs to be drilling right, and he's not drilling right now.
It's
because it takes 2 to tango.
For sure. And I was very, very like Johnny.
You and Johnny growing up right by each other.
We were our parents were best friends growing up, so I've known him since birth. But we were drill partners since we started wrestling, same age together. We were drill partners from 2nd grade up until 8th, and until we split high school, which was so weird when we weren't drill partners. Mm-hmm. But we went to every camp together. Our dad would bring in technicians. Johnny had a wrestling room in his basement, and it was just religious. And I never had to worry about that. Some of my biggest pet peeves when some of these kids will come to a small group lesson and they don't have a drill partner. I always try to especially these small group private lessons that I do, come with a partner, or at least text me that you need somebody, because having a good drill partner will make a world of a difference. I always claim if I have kids, I need twins. I need twins. I need drill partners.
Yeah.
Because it's nice. I trained 2 brothers, Julian and Gabe Tagg, and they were probably the most talented kids I've coached.
And they were 1 weight apart, right?
They were 1 weight apart, and they were 16 months apart in age. And
perfect. It
was literally perfect. And you talk about, I got them when they were good, and watching them drill was just art. It was just beautiful. And it just made coaching so fun. And I was it was almost like I was I was conducting an orchestra. I was do this, and they were I was okay, this is awesome.
You're just kind of like the puppet master.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was looking for. I could just tell them to do things and they could do it. And I was mind blown. I was these kids are going to be so good.
So we got the Ohio State tournament this weekend.
Yeah.
Tell me maybe about a kid that you got that you think is going to make some noise that might be a little bit under the radar.
So I have a freshman at Brecksville. I wouldn't say he's under the radar, but I've been training him a long time, and he's a 106-pounder little guy, and he's ranked number 2. Ed's kid is the ranked number 1, and
go on record. Is he going to beat the Ed's kid this weekend?
Yeah, he's beating him.
Well, here's the thing. This doesn't come out till next Wednesday.
I'll look like a genius. No, he's been grinding. And
what's his name?
Rylan Seacrest. Rylan, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a little badass.
I'm going to watch him this weekend.
Yeah, he's tough. But they wrestled at state dual finals, Ed's versus Brecksville, and took him down right away. And I think the score was 4-2 to start the second. Ed's kid locks up a cradle, pins him. So, but it was, I want to say it was fluky, but he's not going to stick him. That would have never happened. They're both super high level kids, but I'm fairly confident that he's going to get it done.
Well, I hope that when you listen back to this episode next week, that you'll be
we might have to cut this.
Yeah,
I hope not.
Well, I'll tell you what, I wish him luck and all the Brecksville kids luck.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, man, it was great having you on here today. Yes. Where can people find you? Kind of give us all the info.
So Compound wrestling. It's on Instagram. And then my personal is Mitch7, which I post technique videos and stuff like that. And working on getting a little TikTok going too. So we'll see.
Got to get the TikTok to lure the young kids in, right?
Exactly. Well, some of these kids are going to start forgetting my name. Like I'm at this age right now where the dads know me, but the kids are starting not like they didn't remember watching me wrestle.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of out of that. So I got to keep my name a little relevant.
Well, maybe when they're walking around the shot tonight, they'll see that 3-timer on the wall up there. You're still on there, right?
Yeah, I am still on there. Yeah, hopefully.
Ty, it was great talking to you today, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate you you stopping in to chop it up and, get to do the fire and ice and train a little bit today. Yeah. Make sure you guys give Ty a follow. Make sure you guys check out our sponsors, Max Effort Muscle, Ice Barrel, and, of course, the new Coach Myers Strength Conditioning app. Go to CoachMyersStrength.com. Download the app. 7-day free trial. After that, it's only $14.99 a month, and that is going to be the best $15 you've ever spent in your life. We are out.